I'd like to welcome you all back this evening. From what I can tell, it's 7 o'clock straight up, and I like to start on time. Welcome back to all of you. I don't know whether we'll have some others kind of dribbling in with time, but let's not waste any time this evening and just to kind of get started, okay? Anybody here for the first time? Okay, so there's a first timer, there's a first timer. I mean, if you were here last time, then you wouldn't be a first timer, right? Okay, that's what I'm trying to find out. Who wasn't here last time? Okay, so now, welcome back. Or welcome. Glad to see you all here again. You want me to mention? Okay, there's the... There's the participants guide, which we depend on. There's some activities to do in there, and they're for sale in the back for those of you that are interested. Those of you who already have it will be following along. We have some exercises in there that I trust you will find helpful. I thought you were going to bring me one. You would? Okay. Because when I'm looking at what, it's easier if I'm looking at what you're looking at, and it keeps me from getting quite so confused. So our goal here is to understand that eating plants helps make us healthier. As I mentioned last time, you don't have to be a vegetarian or a vegan in order to be healthy, but you do have to eat a lot of plants. That's what the science is kind of telling us. So it'll be a pleasure to review the principles and some of the details. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Okay, I think we should start with a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we're thankful for the opportunity to meet again and to discuss the principles of health which you have put into our bodies. We're thankful for what you have revealed to us, for what we have discovered of the way physiology works and how we can live healthy and happier lives. We need your Spirit to guide us into truth, not just to teach us the truth, but also to enable us to really put it into practice. Thank you for being here with us this evening, and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, Eat Plants, Feel Whole. That's the website as well. Anybody looked the website up over the last week? Okay, well, this week we promised you the as-grown principle, and our objectives look something like this. We want to look at the benefits of a whole food plant-based diet from the scientific standpoint. We're not going to review all the studies, but we're going to share with you the general principles and kind of what we know. We're going to look at macronutrients, protein, fat, carbohydrates, water, and how food is different than nutrients. Of course, the as-grown principle, and then a quick look at sleep and gratitude and how they affect your health. Those of you who were here last time, remember that we start with a little bit of a video, and I trust you find this enjoyable and a helpful introduction.
Not long after she started working in my office, Anne, a nurse, told me her story. Her family struggled with all kinds of health issues: obesity, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and even heart disease. One night, when she phoned her sister, she noticed that Nancy sounded unusually upbeat. Nancy said, "I feel great. I read a new book and it changed my life. I've lost weight, I'm sleeping better, I'm full of energy." Anne was shocked to learn that the book was my book, Eat Plants, Feel Whole. She asked me about it the next day. When I gave her a copy, she agreed to try my recommendations. Soon she started feeling great too, just like Nancy. When she visited her cardiologist at her next exam, she and her doctor were thrilled to see that her high blood pressure had started to come down and she had lost weight. Her LDL, or bad cholesterol levels, had dropped dramatically, as had her total cholesterol. She was able to reduce her medications immediately, and her insurance company even sent her a $400 refund on her insurance premium because her health was so much better. As you think about how whole plant foods bring your body back to life, keep in mind that you eat food and not nutrients. The health community tends to focus on macro or micronutrients, highlighting one or another as its benefits are discovered. But nothing works alone. Every nutrient interacts with other nutrients, our genes, our environment, our hormones, and many other things. A better approach is to focus on dietary patterns and to identify the dietary pattern that is healthiest. Remember, we eat food, not nutrients. Most evidence points to the best diet as one that includes a broad, colorful spectrum of minimally refined plant-based foods. These foods provide the greatest overall benefit to our bodies. If there was a single nutrient that promised a 15 to 30% decrease in the chance of you dying, would you be interested? There is. Fiber. It's the super nutrient most of us don't get enough of. If your diet includes lots of animal products and refined carbohydrates, you probably don't get enough fiber. Animal products have no fiber. Refined carbohydrates have little or none. By adding more plant foods into your meals, you'll up your fiber intake. And that's not hard to do. It's easy. People who are learning to eat healthier always have questions such as, where will I get enough protein? Are carbs harmful? Is all fat bad? How much water do I need? How much salt is too much? These questions and more will be discussed in this session. Now let's talk about principle number 2, the as-grown principle. This means that the closer you eat to the way the food was grown, the better your health will be. We looked at the whole food spectrum last time. Here's that second dimension, the whole food axis. At the top are foods that are more natural and unprocessed. At the bottom are foods that are highly processed and food-like. For example, a whole apple is healthy, very healthy. Press it into juice, and it may still be healthy, but less so. Bake the apple into a pie with all the white flour and saturated fat in the crust, and its health benefits drop even further. Or eat the apple in a packaged breakfast bar, and that apple is about as processed and unhealthy as it can be. Or consider the humble potato. A baked potato topped with beans and chopped chives, it's much healthier than a potato salad, potato chips, or French fries. As you implement the as-grown principle, try to choose more unprocessed and minimally processed foods that are closer to their natural state. These high-quality foods will help you to experience better and more vibrant health.
Now let's talk about how to apply the as-grown principle in the grocery store. The produce aisle is one of the best places to find as-grown food, but there are other places too. You can find dry beans and peas, whole grains and raw nuts. And canned beans are simple and great to have when you're in a hurry. Salsa, hummus, whole grain breads and tortillas, rye crisps, and plant milks are other simple foods found in most grocery stores. In your kitchen, you can apply the as-grown principle by using less refined and more natural products in your dishes. For instance, use brown rice instead of white rice. Use whole grain flours instead of white flour. When eating out, think about which menu items are closest to their natural state. A green salad with a spritz of lemon is much healthier than breadsticks or nachos. Steamed veggies are healthier than a serving of white pasta. And rather than smothering your baked potato in butter, sour cream, and cheese, try something new like steamed broccoli, sauteed mushrooms, black bean chili, or salsa.
Our bodies need sleep. And if we don't get enough, we aren't able to perform at our best. Insufficient sleep has been linked to high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, obesity, brain aging, and even dementia. So, how can you get more good quality sleep? Here are a few tips. Turn off all the digital screens at least 1 hour before going to bed. Avoid caffeine intake during the day. Establish a regular bedtime routine to let your body know it's time to sleep. Exercise regularly and make sure you finish your workout at least 2 hours before bedtime. Try deep breathing, listen to peaceful music, or pray and meditate before going to bed. Remembering our blessings has a powerful impact on our health. If you're not in the habit of keeping a gratitude journal, I encourage you to try it. Making a list of what you're grateful for releases dopamine, the pleasure hormone. Showing gratitude can also reduce pain levels, relieve stress, improve your sleep, increase your energy, and help ward off anxiety and depression.
Well, there you go, a little introductory video. Nobody went to sleep with that, so we did okay, right? That nurse in my office by the name of Anne, well, that's the name that was the film name that she wanted. Was that her name? I think it was Anne. Yes, her sister was Nancy. She agreed to have her story used, but she said, would you please use these names? She said, I can't explain, it's from our childhood. I thought it was pretty cute. But here she was, the head nurse in our office, and her whole family had trouble with obesity. Her sister, I was in Florida, and her sister lived in New York. And they talked once or twice a week on the phone, and the sister was always complaining about she couldn't lose weight no matter what diet she tried. And then she came up with this book, and now she was following this diet and it was better. I think it was the second time Anne talked to her that she finally said, well, what's that book? Maybe I should get it myself. And she gave her the name, Eat Plants, Feel Whole. And she said, who's the author of that book? So, well, let me get it, she said. So her sister goes and gets the book, and she comes back and says, why, that's Dr. George Guthrie. She says, that's my doctor. She says, so it was kind of a fun surprise, and I really enjoyed it when she told me the story. And then she decided she was going to do it. So to me, it was a success story that I was glad to put into the program, obviously, which came after the book. So, a little bit about eating plants and feeling whole. So there is a discussion question, and this is page 37 in your participants manual. When you think about whole food, plant-based lifestyle, what comes to mind for you? Is it logical? Is it emotional? Torture? Anybody want to volunteer? Great food, she says. Okay, so someone has some experience.
I think a lot of color.
Yes. We talk about sometimes eat the rainbow, and that doesn't include jelly beans, okay? But if we eat the whole plant and it's got the color, generally that color has some excellent nutrition for us. That's good. Tasty? Okay, it depends a lot on the seasoning and the cook and whatnot, but it certainly can be. Some people think about a protein deficit. Are you one of those people? We'll talk a little bit about that as we go here. Are vegans and vegetarians always healthy? Why or why not? You're right, they're not always healthy. Why might a vegetarian or vegan not be healthy? Oh, vegan Oreos. Okay, I suppose. So there are foods that come under the category of vegan, that is no animal products, that are still unhealthy. So that's an important reason. There are other reasons as well. When I was 12 years of age, my sister was born with cystic fibrosis. Now, whose fault was that? It was genetic, and it's a kind of, both my parents had to have the gene for it to come together in my sister. She actually died from that about 6 years later. Now, was that her fault? Was that the family's fault? Was that my parents' fault? No. So, my wife and I have tried to eat very healthy for quite some time. She's been a health educator, and a couple of years ago now, she came down with a very strange blood cancer called Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia. Now, she wants to feel guilty. What did I do wrong? Those questions go through in her mind. There's an enemy out there, right? And he's been working for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and disease comes sometimes from things that we have no control over or are ignorant about. So the reason we choose a plant-based diet is because the evidence shows that it is actually the healthiest way to live. There's always individual variation between us. Some people don't tolerate beans very well at all. For other people, it's a miracle food. And you'll be hearing me talk about beans. I've even been called beanie by people who have heard me talk because I say too much about beans, but they may not be for your system. We're all a little bit different. So we're trying to do the best we can. We recognize that the world is not perfect, and unless the good Lord comes beforehand, we'll all die, right? So we're looking to be healthy and happy the longest. Okay, we recognize that not everything that's vegan and not everything that's vegetarian is healthy, but we're healthiest when we have a pattern where we're eating a lot of plants. Okay, let's spend some time talking a little bit about the whole food plant-based lifestyle. It is not pescatarian. What does pescatarian mean? Eat fish, okay? If you eat fish and none of the other animal products, you're called a pescatarian. Lacto-ovo-vegetarian, someone who takes milk and eggs. That's the way I grew up until I went to graduate school. Vegan, of course, in many places, this is, at least when it initially started out, almost a religion, right? You couldn't have anything that had animal products in it. Some vegans won't have honey because it came from the bees. Some people won't wear leather shoes or a leather belt because, so it has a variety of meanings here. Raw foodist, has anybody... Maybe I should ask you if you are a raw foodist, but maybe that would be unfair. I have friends who really like to do the raw cooking, and they're good cooks, and we enjoy their food when we visit them, but they don't want anything cooked, or they have minimal amount of cooked food. So it's just raw, and that doesn't mean just chewing on a carrot. They actually do quite a bit of processing to it. So it's not that. I heard at one point a lecturer who was talking from up front about this principle said that he mentioned a cracker cheese vegetarian, right? So crackers are generally highly refined, and cheese is, of course, lacto-ovo-vegetarian, so it fits in that category. But if you just ate crackers and cheese, it wouldn't be a very healthy diet. It's probably been 35 years ago or so, I don't know. There was a report in the medical literature of a young man in New York City at 9-10 years of age who had developed vitamin B12 deficiency because he was a vegan. He was a very picky eater. He would only eat French fries and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Okay? So that's vegan, but it's just not very healthy, and it led to some nutritional problems for him. Does that make sense? Has anybody heard the name John McDougall? John McDougall was one of the early kind of plant-based nutrition doctors, and I've respected him for a long time. And I remember hearing him lecture to a group of us doctors several years ago. And he said, technically he says, I'm a turkitarian. He says, at Thanksgiving, I have a little turkey. Okay? So, I mean, the point is, it's really the whole plants that you eat that bring the health, and a little bit of some of these other things will generally not cause significant harm. Okay? So we're going to try to avoid the V words. So vegan and vegetarian. What we're really looking for is whole food, plant-based. That's our whole food, plant predominant. Okay, that's another phrase that we sometimes use. What are those benefits? Well, if you look at the science and we look at this as a dietary pattern, we find that it is associated with reversing type 2 diabetes, lowers blood pressure and cholesterol and blood sugar, calms down inflammation in the blood vessels, may even reverse atherosclerosis, so the hardening of the arteries clears and comes off, decreases the risk of heart disease and stroke, promotes weight loss, because the calories aren't as concentrated, fills us up sooner, helps the gut get healthier, more because of the fiber and other things as well, protects against cataracts and macular degeneration. Interesting, huh? All those good colors. Decreases acne, and by stimulating collagen production actually decreases wrinkles. Okay, that sounds like a good thing. As we get older, we all tend to get those. We've been joking about them at our house for some time. Prevents and treats, believe it or not, erectile dysfunction. So some sexual function there. Slows aging and increases life expectancy and improves memory and brain function. So, I mean, a lot of good things been associated with plant-based pattern of eating from the scientific literature. Okay, let's talk a little bit about these macronutrients. Fat, water, and fiber-rich carbohydrates. So, I think we mentioned a little bit about fat. I'm trying to remember how much I covered last time. So fat is made of chains of carbons. So if you have a chain of carbons, and each carbon has 4 hands, they're hanging on to hydrogens, 2 of them for each of them. If that's completely full, that's a saturated fat. A carbohydrate is a ring of carbons, 5 or 6 usually, that are put together. They have hydroxyl groups and hydrogens attached to that to make different kinds of carbohydrates. And a protein is carbon, carbon, nitrogen, carbon, carbon, nitrogen, carbon, carbon, nitrogen, with different kind of branches off of it. And depending how that folds together depends on what that protein is. But the building blocks are these amino acids that make the carbon, carbon, nitrogen, carbon, carbon, nitrogen. These are the macronutrients that we usually talk about. They're the major part of what we actually eat. So, generally we talk about macronutrients as being fat, carbohydrates, and proteins. I have added 2 more macronutrients because they're a large part of our nutrition. Now, most nutritionists don't include them. As a matter of fact, we didn't even know they were important. But fiber ends up being extremely important for our gut, as I mentioned previously. Fiber is made up of carbohydrates that are made in chains. Okay? Carbohydrates, so sugars attached together in chains, so now ring, 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 all attached together, end up making what we would call a carbohydrate. When it's digested, it turns it slowly into sugars. When it's undigestible and we don't have the enzymes to break it, because there's different kinds of bonds, that's a fiber. So fiber, by definition, you put it in here and it comes out there because you don't have the enzymes to cut it down. So we thought it was useless and worthless, but it ends up that it is actually very important to have it. And let's talk a little bit about why. So simple sugars are the ones where there's just one sugar. And the 2 sugars put together, like table sugar. I think we mentioned that last time. How fast sugar goes into the body, how fast carbohydrates go into the body, is very important as far as our health is concerned. One of my friends likes to tell the story this way. He tells the story of Petersville and Paulsville, two separate towns. Petersville gets 120 inches of rain a year, and Paulsville gets 120 inches of rain a year. Quite a bit of rain, I would say, right? In Petersville, it drizzles all year long, almost every day. Occasionally there's a sunshiny day. In Paulsville, it's dry all year, and that water comes all on 1 or 2 days, certainly within a week. What's the difference? Well, we've got Petersville, which is green and luscious, and we have Paulsville, that is a desert most of the time, and then has flooding, which causes a whole bunch of damage. Does that make sense? So as kind of a way of looking at carbohydrates, if they come in dribbling in over time, the body handles it. If you get too much of it, it overwhelms the system and causes damage. You get flooding. To me, that's a helpful illustration. So anything that we can do to slow that sugar down as it goes into the bloodstream, the better it will be for our body. When sugar goes in large amounts, it tends to make the red blood cells stick together. They become chains or trains instead of individual red blood cells. They call that rouleau. That's kind of the fancy, I guess, French name for it. And it plugs up blood vessels, decreases the blood flow. So it's having it come in quickly also increases inflammation by kind of overwhelming the endothelium. The endothelium, or the lining of the blood vessel, is not able to say no to glucose. When that glucose goes in large amounts, it creates a whole bunch of, have you heard of these things called free radicals? Okay, so they cause damage to proteins and DNA and that type of thing. So when the sugar is up high, especially over time, it can cause this inflammatory damage from that kind of flooding, if you will. So what happens is when the carbohydrates, the sugars, are from starches, they come in more slowly. So the body has to cut them apart. So that slows them down a little bit. So starches are better than the fast sugars. Make sense? When those carbohydrates are undigestible, we call them fiber. And when the fiber is mixed in with the other carbohydrates, they're released even slower. That means the blood sugar doesn't shoot up after the meal, but it's a long, slow, gradual release. That long, slow, gradual release helps the body, gives energy, but it doesn't cause the flooding that one gets in a place like Paulsville. Does that make sense? Okay, any questions about fiber? I mean, there's a lot more we could say, but does it make sense to you? We can say something about that, sure. So, the fiber is divided into two, soluble and insoluble. Soluble means it's soluble in water. Insoluble means that it's not soluble in water. So generally, the insoluble has a crunch to it. So when you bite an apple, it has that crunch. It helps hold water into the colon and helps to soften our stool if we have an adequate amount of water. So the water and the fiber together keep the stool soft and help take care of constipation, hemorrhoids, varicose veins, and a variety of other things. Soluble fiber is sticky. So think of the foods that are actually that have fiber in them that are sticky. So one of those might be oatmeal, for example, which is rather high in soluble fiber. Soluble fiber has some incredible benefits. Other foods besides oats. So oats is a good place to get soluble fiber, but beans are also high in soluble fiber. And if you think about it, you probably know okra and eggplant, and those kind of sticky foods will be fairly high in fiber. Most of us tolerate beans and oats fairly well. Some people have their emotions turned on end when they think about eggplant or okra, and I understand. Although I don't mind either of them. So that's the soluble fiber. The benefit is that soluble fibers provide the very best substrate for the bacteria in our gut. And the bacteria in our gut chew on those, and they release some interesting, we call them short-chain fatty acids. One of them is called butyrate. Another one is called propionate. The butyrate is the fuel of choice for the intestines, and I think we touch on that a little bit later in here. So that helps keep the junctions in the colon tight. Have you heard of leaky gut? So that comes from inadequate butyrate in the intestines, which of course is made from soluble fiber by good bacteria in our gut. The propionate, interestingly, is absorbed into the bloodstream, and it goes up to the liver and turns down cholesterol production. At least that seems to be the evidence. And it goes to your brain and says, "You're not hungry, are you?" So often when people come to me and talk about weight loss, they want to talk about these new drugs. Have you heard about these things that help? Wegovy helps you lose weight. So I tell them the poor man's Wegovy is soluble fiber. Okay, so you take that soluble fiber and it does the same thing. It decreases your appetite and can help lose weight. So taking a lot of fiber, foods with both soluble and insoluble fiber will be beneficial to your health. So thank you for that question. Anybody else with questions about fiber? We'll come back, I think, and probably say a little more about it as we go. So have you heard of an essential fat? Have you heard of the essential proteins, the essential amino acids? A lot of people have heard of those, but they have never heard of essential carbohydrates. You know, there are essential sugars that our body does not do well without. Or, let's say, we do better with. I have written down a couple of them here. One is fucose. Fucose comes in, let's see, mushrooms, kelp, wakame, and beer yeast, or brewer's yeast, right? And it ends up that there's evidence that this fucose helps to turn off breast cancer, which is kind of interesting. It's a sugar. These essential sugars, many of them, especially the ones we don't know much about, will attach to the end of a protein and make that protein work better. So protein is a group of amino acids, and it's got a little carbohydrate stuck on the end, and when there's enough fucose there, it really helps. Another one is called mannose. You may have heard of that. Mannose is another one of those essential sugars, and it attaches to the end of a carbohydrate, and the immune system works better. There's a bunch of things that improve when you have enough of that. Now, you can buy some of these as supplements. I know you probably heard of Mannatech. They kind of try to get this mannose and make it available. Generally, it will come from fruits and vegetables because mannose tends to have a lot of that. You can buy glucomannan as a fiber supplement, so that can be purchased in a health food store. And this is a way to kind of get those. But the truth is, if you eat plenty of plants from a wide variety of colors and places, you will get those, and you don't have to worry about those essential carbohydrates. There's a lot we don't know about them. It's not a place where there's been a lot of study in them, but yet it's important for our health. Again, we don't have to wait until science figures out these essential carbohydrates. If we just eat the plants, we'll be getting them, that which God has actually put in them. Any more questions about fiber before I move on to fat?
What are the plants?
Go ahead.
What are the plants that give you the mannose?
The mannose. Okay. I have it written down here. Black currants, red currants, gooseberries, cranberry juice, tomatoes, apples, peaches, oranges, blueberries. It's in the palm kernel of the edible oil of the palm tree. In vegetables, the gums, you probably heard of guar gum. There's mannose is another one of those you can actually get as a supplement, but it is a fiber chain made of galactomannan. Herbs and spices, beans and legumes, quite a bit in fenugreek, soybeans, kidney beans, lima beans. Wow. Okay? I mean, it just goes on and on. There's little bits of it. It's not so much an energy source for it as it is a nutritional source for it. It's like a micronutrient hiding within a macronutrient. Okay? So that's pretty fascinating from my standpoint. Okay, there was a...
How much fiber should a person get a day?
How much fiber should a person have a day? When I was in medical school, and this is way back in the late 1970s, there was a fella at the University of Kentucky, Lexington, all of a sudden his name slips me, who was treating people with diabetes with fiber. And he was telling them, don't bother counting calories, don't pay any attention to the sugar, don't pay any attention to the fat, because we were all arguing about those things in those days. His name was James Anderson. I knew it would come to me, okay? And he was telling them 55 to 65 grams of fiber a day. So they were trying to get more and more and more. And of course, this is supposed to not come from supplements, but from foods. By the time they got their 55 to 65 grams, they were full. They really didn't want anything more. And he was reporting blood sugars were coming down, weight was coming down, blood pressure was coming down. Everybody was getting better, right? When they switched to high fiber. So most all of us will do better to take more. I think the recommended amount is, somewhere closer to 20, 25 grams a day. That may still be a little high for what is actually people are getting, because most people are not getting enough fiber.
People are also dying. So.
That's true. That's true. That's true. So, fiber has a lot of benefits, and if you just aim for more fiber, eating more fiber, I really like to do that for weight loss programs, for people who want to lose weight. Aim for fiber. Try to get more fiber. And not the supplements, but the food with fiber. So that means you end up eating a lot of beans because they've got a lot of fiber in them. Some people may worry about the fiber because it causes something called gas. You all know anything about this? Okay. I have something to say for you on that. To err is human. Yes, ma'am.
The more you eat of them, the less you eat.
That's exactly right. Our gut gets used to it. So if you're going to move fast to a high fiber diet, you'll have more trouble with flatus, is the technical term, with gas. If you move slowly, then the more you eat, the actually less problem. And for those of us that have eliminated the animal products, milk, cheese, etc., there's much less of the sulfured amino acids, and the sulfured amino acids is what makes the smell so bad. So if you move to 100% plant-based, the smell actually disappears. So, beans, the musical fruit, the more you eat, the more you toot. The more you toot, the better you feel, so let's eat beans for every meal. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the fats. We've said a little bit about them. Fats are useful in the body. They're absolutely necessary for life. Like protein, fats are necessary for life. They're used for a variety of things in our body. We can think of it, yes, as stored energy. That's kind of that spare tire. But it's also used, the cell walls, each cell of the body, even the organelles inside, are fat layers. It's used as insulation. Yes, it keeps us, it's padding and insulation for our kind of bulk. But it's also electrical insulation on our wires. That is, our nerves that are carrying the messages from one part of the body to another have a coat of fat around them, which is electrical insulation. So fat has some vitamins kind of effect as well. So there's a bunch of different nutrient things. We need fat. There's a little difference between, we talk about good fats and bad fats. The good ones tend to lower cholesterol, but they all have about the same number of calories. So some people will try to take a lot of good fats, but it has a lot of calories too, and you can gain weight on good fats. So it's better to restrict them, if you will, at least a little bit. We know that a low-fat diet is associated with a heart disease reversal. The first studies, those studies that have been published to date, when they talk about removing cholesterol from the artery walls, actually use a low-fat diet. Now, how much fat is allowable? We don't know that yet. But we know from people like Caldwell Esselstyn and Dean Ornish that a low-fat diet can actually take the cholesterol off the walls of the arteries, which is pretty amazing. We didn't used to think it was possible. Again, everything that's alive has fat in it. 9% of the calories in lettuce is fat. Now, I didn't say 9% of lettuce is fat. I said 9% of the calories. Most of it is cellulose, which is fiber, and water. But there is some protein, there is some fat in anything that's alive. So it's there. And so you're not going to get away from it completely. I think Dean Ornish went for 10% of the calories from fat. When you recognize that lettuce has 9% of the calories from fat, you can see that it was rather restrictive. I know I worked at the Lifestyle Center of America for a number of years, and we decided we were going to check and see what our low-fat diet actually was. So our PhD-trained nutritionist dug into our kind of what we were serving the guests that came for their disease reversal, and we found that our fat content was closer to 20% when we were on the ultra low, and it went up to around 30% for the kind of maintenance type, non-therapeutic foods. Let's see. What else can I share with you? And I don't remember for sure what I said last time, but let me repeat it because there may be a few people here who haven't heard it yet. We think about cholesterol. Cholesterol is the detergent, or an important part of our body's detergent, which allow fat and water to be together in our body. We're about 60% water, maybe 70% when we're younger, and we need fat in order to live. So how do you get water to move in fat to move in a water environment? You have to have a detergent, a soap of some kind. And cholesterol is a major component of that, certainly within our blood. And there are some other things as well. I mean, the diglycerides and bile, etc., have other things in it, but think of cholesterol that way. The more fat you take in, especially the long, straight, saturated fats, which I think we talked about last time, the more cholesterol your body's going to need to make. Okay? So, yes, the unsaturated fats tend to be a little better for us, but they're not perfect either, because if you take the polyunsaturated fats out of the food that they're in, they will tend to deteriorate. You know this. If you use whole wheat flour, you know it turns rancid unless you keep it in the freezer, right? Because it's been opened up and the polyunsaturates are reaching the air, and with time and light, they'll start to change. They break in different places in the chain. They start to be smelled by us, and the science seems to indicate that this is not always really healthy for us. So rancidity is a problem. Some people are trying to get their omega-3, for example, from flaxseed or something like that, and they'll grind the flaxseed up, or they'll get the oil. The oil deteriorates rather quickly. Time, light, heat. So if you're going to have these oils, these polyunsaturated oils, better to keep them either in the freezer or in the refrigerator in a dark bottle so the light can't get in, and don't use it for a long time. Ideally, if you're going to use flaxseed, put it in your coffee grinder just before you eat it, and then put it on your cereal, and then you'll get good soluble fiber, and you'll get some excellent polyunsaturated fats as well. You don't want to use the polyunsaturated fats for cooking because they deteriorate quickly. The best way to get these fats is in the whole food, because when God designs it with those polyunsaturates, they're safe within a package that includes a lot of, and you've probably heard of tocopherols, vitamin E. These are free radical scavengers which keep the fats stable much longer. So better to eat the fruit, the whole fruit, and nothing but the fruit, so help me. Okay? That is, it's best to have the whole food rather than pulling the oil out. If you're going to take one out, and I think we mentioned this last time, something like olive oil, a monounsaturated is generally a little safer way to go. Any questions about fats? Any further questions about fats? Yes?
If we're using coconut oil, I have the stuff that's already, it's hard. I didn't realize that, but it's hard. Are you using it as butter? Don't use the butter at all. Is that good or?
So she's using coconut oil as butter because it is hard, so she can pick it up with a knife and spread it. So the problem with those long saturated fats is they tend to stimulate more cholesterol production, right? And the reason it's hard is because it's long, straight fats. If they're bent, it'll turn into oil on your plate, right? It's the long, straight ones that end up being spreadable. So I would say be careful with that. It's not like all coconut oil is bad. It's just recognize that there's that dilemma. And I don't remember, did I mention anything last time about lauric acid? So nobody remembers? So one of the long-chain fatty acids, the most common one for our bodies is called stearic acid. It has 18 carbons. So the one that has 16 is called palmitic. Okay? The one that is, they kind of get short. That's the one that's hardest on the cholesterol, or makes the cholesterol go up most. One of them down here is the 12-carbon one. The 12-carbon one, saturated fat, this is very interesting. I heard this at the American College of Nutrition meeting, probably 20 years ago. They had fed about the equivalent of lauric acid, the 12-carbon, to people in San Francisco with HIV/AIDS. And they found the equivalent of about 6 coconut macaroons a day, and they dropped their viral loads in half because it interfered with the viral replication. So you see, not everything that's saturated is bad. In general, a good principle is get it from the food, the way God made it, right? So that tends to give us a whole bunch of things we don't know about yet. Science is very slow in figuring the whole thing out. The truth is that nutrition is extremely complex. If you just look on one vitamin, one mineral, you'll be supplementing for the rest of your life, right? I mean, it can be a real challenge. And to find just the right balance, they all interact together. Even the non-nutrients like fiber are extremely important for our body. So get it in the package that God made it, and get most of your food there. It's not that you never do those things. It's not that you never take a supplement. But focus on the pattern that says whole plant foods. I think I made that fairly firmly. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So here's the kind of next one, and this is a little bit of activity. It's on page 43. So I'll invite you to turn over there and learn about it. So you'll see on page 43, you can see our body is 60% water. This water benefits our body in many ways. It regulates body temperature. Of course, sweating helps us with that. Lubricates organs, tissues, and joints. Carries nutrients and oxygen. It's an important part of the blood as well. Removes waste and toxin. Takes it to the kidneys. Moistens the eyes, mouth, and nose. Helps to maintain blood pressure. Boosts performance during exercise. People who are hydrated can exercise longer. Curbs overeating. Interestingly, appetite, that hunger, may come from thirst, at least in part, because the body knows that the carbohydrates and the fat, and even the protein, to a lesser degree, are turned into water. So foods are a source of water. So if you just have water before you eat, you can help to decrease your appetite, maybe 20 minutes beforehand. Aids in digestion and improves brain function. That's just that increased blood flow through the frontal lobe. So what barriers might someone have that would keep them from drinking enough water every day?
Hey,
Taste, I don't like the water. It doesn't taste good. Now, taste of water is a very interesting thing. I have a physician friend whose mother, or was it grandmother, had a well on her property that was very high in sulfur. And maybe you've had that water and it's kind of, we don't like it, right? For her, whenever she got water, she said, didn't like that water because it didn't taste right. She really got used to the sulfured water, okay? And that was a little bit of a challenge for me. I don't get along with sulfured water very well. So the taste may vary, and our tastes can be taught. But the truth is, you don't have to put up with the taste of water. If water's hard for you to do, you can just, for example, put a little squeeze of lemon, 3 or 4 drops of lemon juice in it, and the calories will be negligible, and it'll make that water work for you, and you can get that hydration. Anything else?
How do you determine how much water is enough?
How do you determine how much water is enough? That's a good question. You know, too much water is dangerous. Have you ever heard of drowning? And when people drink a lot of water, they can actually dilute the sodium out, and their heart can stop from that. So we see this happening sometimes in the hospital. It kind of scares us when we see that sodium low from people who are drinking too much water. So how do we know to get enough? Generally, they say 6 to 8 glasses per day, right? But the science on this is actually quite limited, interestingly. So we don't know for sure. That 6 to 8 glasses a day, I think, means 6 to 8 cups. The glass I use is pretty big, right? So I think what it means is cups. But if it's hot outside and you're sweating, well, you probably need more. If it's cold, you may not need as much. Your body says, I don't want that much water, and so I'm going to try to get rid of it. So it releases a hormone called antidiuretic hormone to help you keep water, and then when that goes down, you tend to throw it out, okay? Maybe you've noticed that. When the weather changes, goes hot or cold, your weight may bounce up and down. When it gets hot, your weight will go up a couple of pounds. When it gets cold, it'll drop a little bit. It may not have been what you ate. It may have just been your body adjusting the water. Again, we don't have good science on it. Some say you should take your weight in pounds, divide it in 2. And then you take that many ounces a day. But there's no science behind that. That's just kind of what people have said. I encourage people. There's lots of opinions. And you notice I'm not giving you science. I'm giving you kind of opinions. And you're exactly right about that. We don't know that exactly. We know you can get too much. We know you can get too little. Too much drinking, lowering the sodium, you may do better if you actually take more salt, because a lot of people are on a low salt diet. When you have lots of water, you should probably have more salt. When I was young and we were working in the sun, my parents would give me salt tablets. Do you all any remember of those? So that could be very helpful. Some of us have been pushed too low in our sodium. Okay, so good point. I encourage people to have their urine slightly yellow. So when you look in the toilet, is it slightly yellow? You're probably getting enough.
On factory floors years ago, there were always salt tablets next to the drinking.
He says in factory floors, there were always salt tablets next to the drinking fountain. Now, too much salt can be a problem, too. We recognize that. So you're trying to look for that balance. Try to have urine that is not super yellow. Now, some people take a lot of B vitamins as a supplement, and it'll make their urine very yellow. You can't tell that way, okay? So I try to get very well hydrated each day, at least once. So as we get older, we tend not to be as thirsty. So we tend to be more dehydrated. When you're dehydrated, your blood is more sludgy. You're more likely to have a stroke. You're more likely to have a heart attack. We need the water. But as we get older, especially those of us with short urethras, I think that means ladies, who have had a couple babies pass through, may have a little trouble holding their urine, and that can be kind of frustrating, especially if you're going out. How does one deal with that? Well, I think my father-in-law came up with a really good one on that. Let me try it. Maybe you can find it helpful. What he did was, because he didn't want to be up had a little bit of a stroke, had a hard time getting up and around safely. So what he did was, about 30 minutes before eating, he had a big glass, 2 to 3 cups of water, and then he would go eat. That, interestingly, the water from his blood would then actually go into his food, and a lot of it would go out that way. And then he would urinate once, and he would be okay. So it could be planned. He had it planned in this block. Water beforehand, then eat. He didn't need any liquids with his meal when he'd taken it 20 minutes ahead of time. And then he could urinate afterwards, and he was good until the next meal. So that may be something that helps, right? None of us like to leak when we cough or sneeze, and we worry when we go out and we can't get to toilets. So that may be something that can help you. Okay, let's see, what else does it say? Somebody already asked about the palatable water. I think that's the 4th question there. How can you remind yourselves to drink water regularly, especially as we get older and we lose our thirst? You can make it a habit pattern, right? Part of this is what I do. Oh, the meal's coming, I'm going to drink now. It's going to help me control my appetite. I won't eat so much. Another interesting thing about, let's see, hydrate for health, I think is this next one, is the whole business of vasopressin. Vasopressin is a stress hormone. And when you get dehydrated, vasopressin is released. And so it kind of brings stress. It tends to make the blood pressure go up because the blood vessels constrict. So that is something we'd like to avoid. It tends to cause inflammation. Dehydration causes inflammation. So that is another thing besides sludging of the blood that may increase your risk of stroke or heart attack. So there's a section on that vasopressin there in your participants guide. And then there's this concept of eating your water. Now, I've mentioned this, I think, already. When you eat food, there's water in it, especially if, for example, if you have a grape, there's going to be a lot of water as well as a lot of other good nutrition in it. So now you have eaten your water, right? It's come with the food. If you dry that grape and you take a raisin, then you're not getting that same water. So when you take the whole food, and the less kind of manufactured it is, and even drying comes into this, the more food or water you'll get out of your food. Also, of course, as I mentioned previously, the carbohydrates and the fats and the proteins to some degree are actually turned into carbon dioxide, which we breathe out, and water, which we urinate out. So they're also water sources. So eat your food. When you eat whole plants, you'll get quite a bit of water with them. And of course, the more they've been kind of adjusted soups, of course, are going to have quite a bit of water in them as well. Okay, let's see. Eat your water. There's that vasopressin. And here's the question, how much water do I need? I think we've already talked about that. I will remind you that if you don't get enough water, you're at high risk for kidney stones. People that have had both, tell me that kidney stones are worse than delivering a baby, right? So they're rather uncomfortable. There's a lot of things that can lead to kidney stones, dietary-wise and genetic-wise, but the common denominator in all of them, the common way of avoiding kidney stones is making sure you're well hydrated and the kidneys are flushing plenty of water through. Let's see. I think we want to say something about sodium. I think page 49 has a little section about sodium. So let me say a little bit about that. If you're on a low sodium diet, you may cause trouble because you end up increasing the vascular tone. You release the renin-angiotensin system and activate it. This is one of the strongest things that makes atherosclerosis work. And if your sodium is too low, it tends to make your blood sugar go up. I mean, it's a very kind of fascinating thing. In our world today, in the medical world today, there are a lot of doctors that are pushing really low sodium And I've seen multiple patients coming in with problems to their diabetes and even their hypertension, because if your sodium goes too low, it'll actually make your blood pressure go up because of these reactions to not having enough sodium. So even for people with diabetes and congestive heart failure, that's true. I would love it if somebody would ask me a question about that. Does that make sense to you? I was glad that my last year or two working there at Advent Health in Florida, I began to see cardiologists understanding that and not pushing people so low on their sodium. Yes?
When you say low on the sodium, can you explain that? Because I've understood, if you have high blood pressure, salt related, then it is
Yes.
good.
So I had what do I call it? Middle-aged, I think 40s, attorney drive 3 hours up from the coast of Florida to Orlando to see me because he was healthy. He was trying to stay healthy, and his blood pressure was a problem. It kept bouncing around. We were trying to figure it out. He'd had a bunch of tests done, interestingly, including some genetic testing, which made it easier for me to kind of put things together. And after I went through everything and everything looked good, I said, I think the problem is you're not getting enough sodium. When he started to take more sodium, his blood pressure dropped and stopped at bouncing around. Because when your sodium is too low, it makes the blood vessels constrict from a nerve standpoint, a hormone standpoint, and the blood sugars tend to go up. So it's a little bit confusing. Now there's to us, because we know that super high is a problem, and right where we are in the middle, we're not sure. But we do need a modicum of sodium. It's necessary for life, and if we get too little, we tend to have problems. I probably have had 6 or 7 patients that I found the problem is you're not getting enough sodium. One, actually a dentist, a lady dentist who was like on 5 blood pressure. She was doing the CHIP diet, you probably heard of CHIP, so plant-based. She was exercising regularly, doing the gym, and her blood pressure was still going up. She was on very low sodium. I had her increase her sodium. She dropped down to 1 blood pressure pill. Didn't need that real strong stuff anymore because it had been pushed too low.
Push too low. Do you have the limits?
So we don't know exactly, okay? We don't know exactly where it is, but I generally tell people about a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of salt a day would be kind of the minimum.
Do you want to keep the levels at the low norm?
If I look at the science, we've got latitude. We can actually, as I see it, run up even getting close to pretty much 6 grams of sodium a day, and which would be about 3 teaspoons, right? So 1 gram of sodium is a half a teaspoon of salt. Ballpark, okay? Yes?
So when you say sodium, that's NaCl.
No, that's salt, what you just said. Sodium is the Na,
Yeah.
which is 40%.
So salt, there's the white salt, there's Celtic salt, there's the Himalayan salt. Those have more of the trace elements. My understanding with those trace elements, that helps with the sodium balance. Is that true or not?
Well, there are things in there that may be healthy, and there are things that may be harmful. So that we're not sure of, right? It ends up that the most important thing for something called sodium sensitivity. Have you heard of this? Some people are more sensitive to sodium than others. So if someone is sodium sensitive, you can reverse the sodium sensitivity by putting potassium into the diet. It's the sodium-potassium ratio that makes the biggest difference. Now, where does potassium come from in our diets? Huh? Beans, she says, you're too fast. Most people, if I ask them, doctors, I'll say, so what's the sodium food? Or I'm sorry, the potassium food. And they'll say bananas, right? Well, beans have 3 to 4 times as much potassium as bananas do, okay? Bananas are what?
Are more fun.
Bananas are more fun. Okay, I can take that. The fruits and vegetables all have a lot of potassium in it. It's really quite amazing. So if you're eating a high plant-based diet, the amount of salt is not going to matter that much because the salt sensitivity is actually reversed with the amount of potassium one getting in. Interestingly, in the United States, according to the National Health and Nutrition Examination Study, I think it's National Health and Nutrition, N. Haynes they call it, says that 97% of people in America do not get the recommended intake of potassium. I mean, it's almost everybody is not getting it because they're not eating enough plants, okay? It's extremely important from that standpoint. So you can completely reverse the sodium sensitivity even in African Americans, even in those that have the genetic predisposition. So that's pretty exciting. Those of you who are on extremely low sodium diet, don't go to high sodium quickly. You have to move slowly, okay? If you move quickly, you can actually cause some problems.
I think maybe it was Dorothy, if I heard her voice, who was asking, was that you was asking about the different kinds of salt? Yeah, the different kinds of salt. So is there a recommendation that the medical community makes about, because there's, of course, all kinds of promotions about Himalayan salt.
Oh, there's all kinds of advertising for salts, right? I mean, there's this fancy salt and the Himalayan salt, etc. And then black salt, and I mean, that's fine. I would worry where you're getting your iodine because we've solved a bunch of thyroid problems. As long as you're going to get your iodine in, I'm going to be okay with you kind of moving in other directions, but make sure you get that iodine. I've never seen any science that says, for example, that Himalayan is any better than anything else for any. I have read, not seen any good science on it, but I've also read that there's sometimes some toxic things within the Himalayan salt, right? They're pulling it out of the ground, and it hasn't been purified. It's got those other minerals in it, and those minerals may actually, some of them may be toxic. Too much. I don't know, because I can't prove it either way. Yeah. Enjoy your salt. Just don't take too much, okay? And make sure you get your iodine. So, very good. Wow, we talked a lot about salt and sodium. There's a section there that's about diabetes and heart failure. Is a very interesting study in Australia where they looked at over 9.5 years. They looked at the sodium intake using 24-hour urine collections, sodium in, sodium out, figuring they're about the same. Excuse me. And those with higher sodium intake, steady, not rapid up, but steady, actually had the longer life expectancy on the Kaplan-Meier curve. So, I mean, it's some of what we've been taught about salt is not quite right. So hopefully you learned a little bit, and that's been of some help to you. Yes?
You skipped a section on protein.
Did I? Did I miss it?
Yes. Gluten.
Oh, the gluten. Okay, thank you. I don't remember seeing the slide. Did I just jump over it? It's in the book. Let's say a little bit about the gluten. Okay. So hopefully we let's see, 40. Oh, we just haven't got there yet. Is that right? Oh yeah. Okay. Let's do that. I think we're headed in the right direction. How much water do I need? The next one is let's see, meal planning. We eat food, not nutrients. Looks like, okay, I'll say something about gluten now because you asked the question. So gluten is a protein from grains, right? And we know it's sticky. Some of us will wash the carbohydrates away, use the gluten from a grain, and make kind of vegetarian cutlets, right, out of. So gluten has gotten a bad name recently. There are people with something called sprue, or let's see, it's got some other names too, where people are completely allergic to gluten, and it really messes them up. But there's also another group of people that are gluten intolerant. I heard, it's probably been 15 years ago now, one of the country's experts in the whole gluten disease process give a lecture on it and say, hey, you know, this real gluten sensitivity is really very rare, But he says the evidence shows that people who have some intestinal problems will often improve if they go off gluten. It was like 80% of people with, if I'm remembering correctly, it's been a while, with kind of gluten intolerance or irritable bowel will get better when they stop the gluten. So what's going on with that, right? So I mentioned the tight junctions before. Here's apparently what's happening. Our colon has a lining in it, and that lining has kind of a lot of different folds, and it's got some crypts in it. And then on the crypts, starting at the bottom, the colonocytes, these are the cells that line the colon, are being formed every 5 to 7 days. There's a complete changeover. So they start at the bottom and they move up. Each one of those cells, as they're sticking together, should have a tight junction. If they're not tight, they open up and a little piece of protein, and it might be a milk protein, it might be a gluten protein, will get down in there. And the dendritic cells, the little immune cells, will go up and sense it and create an inflammatory reaction and even an allergic response to that. So it's important to have tight junctions. Tight junctions come from butyrate. Now that's that short chain fatty acid that comes from the bacteria working on fiber in our diet. People on low fiber diets are much more likely to have leaky gut. So when they have leaky gut, they're more likely to have a bad response to things with proteins like gluten. So generally people with a high fiber diets don't have that problem. Now it's interesting, someone who is gluten intolerant can go on a high plant-based diet, their gut microbiome will change, they'll start making more of the butyrate, stay away from the gluten for 6 to 12 months, and then you can actually restart it, and often you won't have that same sensitivity if you're eating a high fiber diet. Yes, ma'am?
Well, I also heard that had to do with the wheat itself and how in the industry that it's processed. If you were able to get somehow, more of the ancient grains and millers.
That it might be better to be ancient. Getting away from make sure you get the fiber in. There's a lot of interesting stuff on that, and I had, for example, a family that they were all my patients in Florida, and they made their own bread. They ordered the wheat from Italy. Over and over again, people have told me they don't have their problem with wheat, with the gluten, until when they go to Europe, because they don't allow them to use this Roundup stuff, okay? So the Roundup doesn't bother us as humans because we don't have the enzyme of what it works on, so it kills the plants. So they've argued it's okay for us, but what it does mess with is our gut bacteria. So it's knocking out the good bacteria. So yes, I mean, it's a rather complex sort of a thing, but it's good news that if you eat a high fiber diet, you can actually protect yourself. Right? It may take some time. Yes, the sourdough works well for that because it's changed. Yeah, it's changed the proteins. Very.
What about genetically modified grains?
Now, I'll tell you. So I think those allergies come from this Roundup stuff, okay, more than it is the genetic modifying. The genetic modifying is done so the Roundup doesn't kill them, or does kill them, or it kills the weeds, but it leaves them okay, right? So we're getting, I think, the reaction from killing off our good bacteria is kind of leading to the allergies, rather than the genetic modification. Does that make sense? Well, there's a mechanism, and it's not the genetic modification that's causing the allergies. It's the genetic modification, the chemical that's being put on those that's causing the problem. So it's the farmer's use of it that's making the difference. That's my understanding. Okay, let's see what we can do. We got that little gluten piece out. Make sure you eat a high fiber diet. There's the salt and sodium. This is talking about the meal plan here. And I see that our time is going, so I'm going to kind of move on here a little bit. So the foods we eat food, not nutrients. And we've kind of defined our knowledge of food by nutrients because, for example, scurvy on the ships caused by an absence of vitamin C. So we discovered a disease that came from not enough vitamin C, and so we called it vitamin C. And as we've gone along one at a time, we've discovered these things and kind of focused on them. So let's see. That's led to something that we would call reductionism. But reductionism, looking at individual nutrients, whether it's macro or micro, causes some problems, and the dietary patterns, as I mentioned, are much better way of looking at eating as far as what's healthy and what's not. Because we eat food, we don't just take supplements, right? So it's that mix. The interaction between nutrients, the interaction between nutrients and the genes, the interaction between nutrients and environment. I mean, all of these things come in and with each other. So in essence, we should try to think more about the food. Okay, there's the gluten, and there's the salt, which we've kind of already talked about. And I think we've covered all that fairly well. So I think this is on page 50 and 51. I would encourage you to do this at home. Let's see if I can find where it is. 50 and 51. And you can see there's 4 kind of columns. And what the suggestion here is that you go through and mark for yourself all of the things that you have had within the last month. And then, is it in group 1, group 2, group 3, or group 4? For those of you that don't have the participants guide, that would be unprocessed foods, minimally processed foods, moderately processed foods, or highly processed foods. And if you find yourself eating quite a bit in the moderately and highly processed, think of ways that you can kind of move yourself to the less processed food. Does that make sense as an exercise to kind of help you make that change? Which group have you checked most in as you review it? Which least? What does that tell you about your eating habits? Okay, so the next then is this eating, that's as-grown principle. And it's better to get it close as you can to the way God made it, if you will. Least processed. So the aim is to get it unprocessed. We have this graphic, and we think it's better to move up this line. Remember the first one? We have choices. You can choose something better. You can choose something that is less processed. Apple is a good food, right? I can eat I can eat maybe 3 apples and I'm stuffed full. Where that apple could be smashed up, the juice is taken out, I have it at the end of my knife, I have 7 to 8 apples worth of energy, sugar, with the fiber removed. There's still some good things in there, but it's processed. Now, and are apples bad? Is apple juice bad? No, but it's better to have apples. We could do the same thing with corn, right? So corn is good. I think when I was a teenager, my record was 13 ears of corn at a corn roast, okay? I mean, it was really good. We cooked it ourselves under the coals and with the sand and everything. But you can smash the corn up, put it in a bottle, put no cholesterol on it because plants don't make cholesterol. Buy it off the shelf, and you're getting 16 to 18 ears of corn in a tablespoon of oil. You put that in a salad dressing, and now you've really concentrated it. You see what's happening? As the manufacturers tend to call this value added, right? So they value add by taking nutrition out of the plants and charging you more, right? So the potato turns into the potato chip. And they get more money for it. That's why it's value added for them. But for you, it's not value added. It's the value has been removed. Does that make sense to you? Okay.
Well, it's probably not a good advertising slogan.
Not a good advertising slogan. That's true. I've said over and over again, there's a reason why they call them do nots. Okay. Right. So, They're highly refined and really not good for us. So how do we manage this principle in everyday life? Frozen foods are a really good place to get in the grocery store. When you go to the grocery store, if you're looking for fresh stuff, if it's there on the shelf or if it's frozen, it's rather interesting. The stuff that's frozen is frozen in the field, just almost immediately. So it's going to have better nutrition than will that which is, fresh in the, quotes, grocery, the produce section. Often that's the case. So you can look for the frozen. Certainly in the legume department, you can look for, the dried beans and cook them, or even the canned beans are good. If you're worried about too much salt, you can rinse the beans. I don't think you should. I think we need a modicum amount of salt, so I wouldn't run away from it. Let's see. Whole grains, of course, are going to be better than the refined grains because the fiber and nutrients, vitamins have been pulled out in the processing. They last longer. That's why you may want to keep them in the freezer before you use them to keep them from going rancid, or even the refrigerator. Let's see. You could substitute, for example, brown rice for white rice, or you can use whole wheat pasta rather than the white pasta. For some people, making the change from one to the other is a little bit of a challenge. In the rice area, you can mix half brown rice, half white rice, and your taste buds will kind of get used to it. Again, the brain is trainable. We tend to think we eat what we like, but the science tells us we like what we eat. And what you are used to, you begin to appreciate. So, for dressings, look out when you head into the restaurant. They did a study once looking at the amount of calories people got, looking salad bar versus ordering from the menu. It ends up the salad bar won by far, because you start going down the line, you start putting things on, that kind of extra dressing and those types of things, and you end up getting a lot more calories. And the dressing, of course, if you can do that with a little bit of lemon juice, there's other things that one can do. A baked potato is obviously better than French fries, right? If you're going out to eat. Okay, we're getting close to the end here. Gratitude. How important is gratitude? It is very powerful, as a matter of fact, to help kind of us deal with some of the challenges of our life, including sleep, for that matter. So, it suggested a gratitude journal might be used for, as you heard in the video, nightly. Don't repeat your thankfulness for at least 3 months, maybe 6 months. So try to find something new to be thankful for. Look for 3 times each night, right? You can't say, I'm thankful for my husband every night. That doesn't count. As if you would, right? But even things like it could be worse. I'm glad my flat tire happened while it was in the driveway instead of on the way to work, right? Those types of things can be beneficial. It ends up that you sleep better if you do that. And if you happen to have a worry that's bothering you in the middle of the night, for example, you can put that down in the journal as well to manage the next morning. Because sometimes we worry we might forget about it. So the journaling can be very helpful to many people. Okay, let's talk about sleep. People who have problems with snoring, sleep apnea, other medical problems where there's actually a problem in our bodies, need to get those taken care of. Just general advice about sleep, it doesn't take care of those things. We can make these suggestions, and these are in your book there on, I think, page 55. Stop your blue light screens. Why blue light? Because blue light stimulates the brain and suppresses melatonin, right? We need to see blue light during the day. It suppresses our sleep hormone and lets our serotonin go up. Serotonin's a happy hormone. Have you all ever heard of seasonal affective disorder? So indoors all the time, you're not getting enough blue light, and there's not enough serotonin made during the daytime. It's best if we can get out in the daytime so we see the sun. It increases our serotonin and suppresses our melatonin. At nighttime, when it gets dark, the melatonin bounces up and the serotonin goes back down. So this helps us sleep. There's only one step between serotonin and melatonin. So we'd like to make that happen. If you have trouble going to sleep, you should see bright light, at least 10,000 lux, sometime when you first get up. You can go out in the sunshine. This time of year, there's no sunshine when you first get up. For most of us, it's dark, right? So there are therapeutic lights which you can use. And many patients have been helped by just getting a therapeutic light and putting it on their desk. When you're having your devotions, interestingly, you don't have to look at the light to get the benefit. As a matter of fact, you get more benefit if you look to the side, because the ones that actually do the more of the stimulation of the brain are the cells on the sides of the eyeball, not the ones where you're focusing. So you don't have to look at it, you just need to have the light in front of you. Look at that light, and to stay asleep, get that at least 20 to 30 minutes of that bright light, at least 10,000 lux, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that'll help you stay awake so you're less likely to wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So that may be beneficial. Again, you can purchase lights that will do that for you. You can put on your desk. Let's see. What else should I say about that?
10,000 lux.
Oh yeah, thank you. 10,000 lux is what the science tells us. Just to give you an idea, if you're out in the sunshine on a summer day in Florida, the sunlight is about 30,000 lux. So it doesn't have to be full bright sun, and you don't have to be in the sun. You just need to be looking up at the sky. So you could sit up on the porch and look up and get that kind of blue light.
I had a basement office several years ago, and I replaced all the lights with full spectrum lights, made a huge difference.
So is this in your employees or just yourself? Okay.
I was working
So he had a basement office, and he changed the lights to full spectrum lights, so there was blue light, and it makes an incredible difference in your emotional mood and probably your sleep as well. Yeah, we got a yes on that. So that may help some of the rest of you. Avoid caffeine. Caffeine, in most people, unless you're a fast metabolizer, sticks around. So you have those 2 cups of coffee in the morning, and 1/4 of the caffeine is still present when you go to bed tonight. It actually can leave quite slowly. People will tell me, I don't drink that much. Oh, good. It'll be easy for you to stop. So that's kind of my response, in essence. And when they stop and find out that they're kind of all jittery, the science is telling us that the upper you get from the caffeine is simply getting rid of the withdrawal from the caffeine. So taper back and wean yourself off it. It certainly is not good for sleep. I made it clear through medical school and residency without any caffeine. I tried to get my sleep, and the energy was there. Exercise would be a much better way to kind of work on that than using caffeine. Routine bedtime habits, so your body knows what's happening, your brain knows what's happening, you're getting ready to go to sleep. Make sure you get exercise every day, but vigorous exercise should not be done within about 2 to 3 hours of sleep. If I play racquetball at night, I don't go to sleep until, it'd take me an extra hour, hour and a half to get to sleep. So I've experienced that one. Stress management. I went to a lecture years ago at a lifestyle medicine conference where they talked about sleep, and there was a fella talking about what did he call it? Sleep easy method. And so he explained this business, and it was like take a deep breath and feel the air go out, right? Focus on that. And then swallow and feel your esophagus relax. And then take a deep breath and feel your diaphragm relax. So he told us about this, and then he said, now let's try it. So we're all in our lecture, right? And it's before lunch, not after lunch. And he says, okay, let's do it. I'm pretty resistant to, the hypnotic sort of a thing. I actually went to sleep right there in the lecture and woke up doing that. So it's a real kind of neat thing to do. to kind of focus on the inside relaxing. Think about the inside relaxing. As you swallow, as you breathe, your diaphragm, and it helps put things at rest. I have another trick which I use to sleep, and especially when I wake up in the middle of the night and I want to go back to sleep, I use the devil to help put me to sleep. I start saying scripture back, and the devil puts me right to sleep really fast. He hates that scripture. So that's my little bit of humor. Sorry. Gratitude can be extremely helpful for helping you sleep. Please do not use sleeping pills. They are good, but your body gets addicted to them. And after about 2 weeks on them, your sleep is about what it was before. So you have to keep going up on dose. The recommendation is not to use more than 15 in a month, because if you use them all the time, your body gets dependent on them. Several patients, I gave patients a bad time about their sleeping pills and did my best to taper them off. Still, one fellow that every time he came into the office, thank you so much for helping me get off of that, because it really disrupts your life in a lot of different ways. Your brain doesn't work as well. Don't use alcohol to go to sleep. Alcohol will put you to sleep for the first, the drink will put you to sleep maybe for an hour, but then there's a rebound and it'll actually tend to waken you up afterwards. So it's kind of foolish to do that. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Okay? Boy, we are late here, so it's time to wrap up. And there's a little review on page 56. Fuel up with fiber-rich carbs. They're the best ones. Remember, go for the slow dribble of sugar into your blood. Sugar is not bad. It's necessary for life. Maybe the problem isn't too much sweetness. Maybe it's not enough fiber. I remind folks at my house who think that sugar is sin. They start with the same letter. That when God gave the Israelites manna, it was sweet. Okay? So sweet is not sin. It's okay, but absence of fiber with a lot of sugar can cause trouble. Get your fats from natural whole plant sources. That's the best place to get fats. Make sure you stay hydrated, decrease your appetite, or keep your appetite down, increase metabolism. When you hydrate, your metabolic rate actually goes up. So in one study done at Stanford, the water intake, not juice, not milk, not other fluids, but water, was responsible for 1 to 2 kilos of weight loss per year, just increasing the water. Fascinating. Eat food, not nutrients. Look after your sodium. Don't be afraid to take some. I say, no more than 3 teaspoons a day, and at least 1 teaspoon of the salt. So that should, not the sodium. The sodium is in the salt. I'm giving you a measure and something that you can actually measure, and most of us recognize. If you're looking at a label, you're going to be thinking sodium. Make sure you get your sleep and count your blessings. So there it is. And let's see. Next time, it's the plant-centric. We're going to focus on why plants are a little bit better. Well, thank you. This has been fun interacting together. I like the interaction and appreciate it. So for tonight, good night. I'll be here for a while to answer your questions if you have some. Thank you very much.
I do have one about saturated fat.
Mm-hmm.
Cashew.
It comes, you see what happens.